Mystic Scotland. The bucket list. To travel in Scotland is to move through a palimpsest, a landscape where eras write their marks in stone, water, and sky without erasing what came before. You come not only to see mountains and lochs, but to read a text authored by geology, myth, and memory. Each place offers a chapter in that larger book, and together they form a syllabus in wonder. The Isles and Highlands are a theatre of light, where weather performs with rigour and flair, and where morning rarely resembles dusk. Time behaves strangely. The Neolithic speaks in circles of stone, medieval saints whisper across water, and the modern traveller stands between, a fortunate witness. The yearning to linger or return arises from this layering. Scotland's mystical sights are not only beautiful, they teach how to look, listen, and dwell in a landscape without seeking to possess it. Consider the Isle of Skye, whose very name feels like a sketch of swirling clouds. Skye concentrates a dramatic syllabus of forms. The Cuillin Peaks are pages from a volcanic past, while the Quirraying presents landslip geology so vivid the earth seems to have moved last week. In an afternoon you may walk from basalt pinnacles that stab the sky to mossed plateaus that still the steppe. At the fairy pools the water runs clear as intention, tier upon tier of turquoise basins beneath dark stone, a contrast that unlocks a childlike thrill. The Gaelic tradition makes Skye a place where thresholds are thin. Light arrives in columns, colours saturate beyond any palette. Skye's magic is precision. It shows you exactly what is there and reveals what is within you. Westward, the Callanish standing stones on Lewis let the Neolithic speak in granite, an arrangement older than the monument on Salisbury Plain, yet no less charged with intention. Set in cruciform with a central circle, the stones align with celestial cycles that scholars still debate, meaning proliferating around such ambition. Walk among them at first light and watch the world assemble. Sheep graze between monoliths while Atlantic squalls gather and pass. With each shift in weather the stones change character. In a lull the lichen sings. At night, when wind presses close and stars hang low, you feel the long conversation between sky, stone, and human curiosity. Callanish demands quiet attention and offers moral clarity. People raised these stones with effort measured in generations. We owe respectful wonder. The Highlands hold waters famous and obscure, but none bears more mythology than Loch Ness. Its fame arrives with a wink, yet the levity sits upon depths among the greatest in Britain. The loch occupies a tectonic fault worn by ice and holds more water than all the lakes in England and Wales combined. Stand at Urquhart Castle, and myth feels plausible, not for sightings, but because depth, darkness, and weather create a stage where mystery seems reasonable. Waves slap stones, sunlight laces the surface. Castle ruins add human drama to natural austerity. Myth persists not in spite of science but alongside it, filling spaces where imagination roves. To visit Loch Ness is to grant that imagination a respectful airing. For a counterpoint, take the short ferry to Iona, a tiny island with an outsized reputation. Here the Atlantic's rough hand opens to a palm of sand, macaire, and ancient stone. St. Columba is said to have landed in the 6th century, founding a community whose manuscripts and missionary vigour radiated across northern Europe. The restored abbey stands, but sanctity adheres more to the island's proportions. Air seems to move differently. Conversation slows. At sunset, the rocks glow with the memory of light. Visitors speak of pilgrimage because Iona models a coherent human scale. You can walk its length in a day and enter a rhythm that renders modern accelerations ridiculous. If Skye teaches you to look, Iona teaches you to breathe. Return to the mainland and the wooded folds of the Trossachs, often called the Highlands in miniature. Loch Lomond stretches long and wide, its islands like punctuation in a poem of water and wood. Slopes are lush in spring, with birch and oak leafing into a green so fresh it feels newly minted. Long a destination of leisure, the Trossachs carry hospitable myth. Tales of outlaws and hidden glens suit a terrain of inviting bends. Paths ride contours of hill and loch. Calm mornings mirror boats and trees. Beneath the gentleness lies intricacy, a tapestry that rewards careful botany and patient birding. The Trossachs show that the sublime need not always arrive with granite fangs. Sometimes it speaks softly and waits while you draw close. If one valley insists upon capital letters, it is Glen Coe, a volcanic trough carved by ice and weathered by story. Peaks lean in as though to confer, narrowing vision to a corridor of drama. One cannot walk here without recalling the massacre of 1692, where politics and betrayal unfolded against a landscape that neither assented nor intervened. Mist pours over saddles and hangs in folds. Rain appears and departs without apology. On shifting days, the slopes display 100 greens, from wet rock's sheen to bright moss in sudden sun. To learn Glen Coe is to accept the discipline of weather. You will not bend the glen to your plans. You will be altered to suit its temperament. And that humility is part of the magic. Cross the Pentland Firth and time takes a different register. Orkney's Ring of Brodgar forms part of a ritual landscape so rich that superlatives soon fail. Circles, tombs and Neolithic villages speak across millennia. Brodgar commands by scale and setting, a wide ring encircled by lochs and horizons that make the sky feel like a participant. Nearby, Maeshowe holds winter light in a passage aligned to the solstice, while Skara Brae reveals stone shelves and beds that make the ancient startlingly intimate. To stand within this constellation is to feel human continuity as palpable. The wind has a voice. Curlews stitch the air. For an hour you become a footnote in a grand treatise on time. On sky again, yet wholly its own, the fairy glen compresses glamour into geography of play. Conical hills rise as though placed by a giant child. A small loshan reflects the forms with fidelity. Visitors often trace spirals in loose stones, a practice not ancient yet fitting. The landscape courts whimsy without becoming trivial. Because the hills are small, the eye reads the scene like a tabletop model, and the imagination happily supplies stories. Enchantment need not always thunder. It can invite a smile. The fairy glen reminds that wonder wears many faces. Far off lies Fingal's Cave on Staffa, a cathedral of basalt wrought by volcanic fire and ocean patience. Hexagonal columns compose walls that are a lesson in geometry and persistence. The sea, often a destroyer, here serves as curator and organist, rendering the cave in clean lines and filling it with sound that is part echo, part breath. To approach by boat on a calm day is to feel the cave gather you. Light enters with restraint, waves fold and unfold. You step along wet stones as though walking within a structure that belongs as much to number as to nature. Fingal's Cave does not need your presence, and that is part of its grandeur. Near the capital, yet apart by density of symbolism, stands Roslin Chapel. 15th century masons lavished a profusion of carved detail that reads like an encyclopedia of medieval imagination. Angels play instruments among vines that seem to grow in stone. Green men peer from foliage as if waiting to be noticed. Conjecture has long circled the chapel, some serious, some fanciful, about secret knowledge and buried prizes. The real treasure is in plain view, the revelation that craft can achieve the condition of devotion. Sit in the quiet and let the eye wander from arch to pillar to boss until the looking becomes a kind of prayer. Across these sites, a traveller gains more than photographs, acquiring ways to inhabit places. Skye teaches precision in seeing. Callanish offers historical humility. Loch Ness balances skepticism and myth. Iona communicates the grace of proportion. The Trossachs show gentleness without sentimentality. Glencoe disciplines by weather and memory. Orkney restores continuity to the human story. The Fairy Glen encourages play. Fingal's Cave restores confidence in number and form. Rosslyn Chapel exemplifies devotion of craft. Together they form an honours course in attention. The knowledge they impart endures because it is not only about the places, but about the habits of mind and soul that flourish in their presence. There is a practical moral. These places do not surrender to haste. Visit in the off-season if you can, when weather is temperamental and crowds thin. Rise early and grant yourself the empty morning. Carry respect for land and culture. When you step lightly and look long, a landscape opens its doors. As you depart, resist hoarding an image at the expense of experience. Walk slower than you think you need to. Listen more than you have words for. Let the weather have its way with your plans. You will be repaid with moments that cannot be purchased, only received, and with a desire to return that feels less like a wish and more like a promise kept between yourself and a land that knows how to keep secrets.